Okay, welcome to 2026, everyone. How are you? I hope you are having a blessed month so far. It's the 11th day of the year 2026. Yay, yay, yay. Welcome to Ask the Experts. So, on behalf of my goal and Haven International, we exist to support families facing autism and other intellectual disabilities throughout their lifespan. And for this year will be 18 years. For 18 years, literally, we've come alongside families to provide resources, to bring expertise, to help them navigate a rather sometimes difficult journey. And I'm just super pleased and excited to have this month's expert, um, someone I know very well, very, very, very well. This none other than Sena Kumapley. She would do her own intro. She's going to be talking about explaining the Autism Resource Kit, your guide to navigating the autism maze. Then I will let her do the big component of it. But the part of the reason why we wanted to do this type of topic is at the beginning of the year, I always like to think about for people who are walking this journey where they're walking through a season of trying to understand how to connect to tools and resources. Where do you go? And as I've said, for these 18 years, we've been able to come alongside families. And one of the elements that really was placed in my heart is what tools can you do? So I'm a woman of faith. I love the story about Noah's Ark. And Noah built this boat, and he called it Ark. So I thought about what I called my goal autism resource kit. So my goal Ark. Okay, so it's kind of cheesy, but hopefully that kind of resonate for people who may connect to that. So it's a tool that we've had, and it lives on our website. So I'll bring Senna on now, who will be doing her presentation and her topic on it. I'll let her introduce you and she can share a little bit more about her because now I'm in a stage of life now where I recognize that she's her own adult and she can do this. So, on to you, Senna. We welcome you. Thank you so much for your willingness to do this topic and putting this presentation together. Welcome aboard.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. G, for such a wonderful introduction. So hello everyone. For those who may not know me, you see my face from time to time on the My Goal page, but my name is Sena Kumapley. And so today I will be your expert. So graciously, I'm very excited about this topic. And as my mom mentioned, we'll be discussing the Autism Resource Kit. I placed this picture on the front screen because oftentimes, as parents, as families, as siblings, walking this journey feels like a maze. There are so many milestones, things you need to keep in mind, things you have to keep track of, and it can be very overwhelming and confusing. And so, the purpose of the Autism Resource Toolkit, or the ARC, is to help to provide a one-stop shop to get a high-level understanding of what is autism, what are the treatments for it, and what are the tools, and how to navigate through the system. And so hopefully this presentation will help you to better understand the toolkit and how to navigate through it. So before we jump into the content for the presentation, just figured it'd be good to introduce myself formally. So I am a very passionate disabilities rights advocate, and you may be asking why. And that is because I am a very proud sibling since 2001 of my brother. That's when he was born. I had always wanted a sibling. And did I expect that I would be walking this journey when I was that young? No, but my brother has made me so much of a better person, on the journey of learning to support him and help him, and gaining such an important understanding of what autism is and how to be a better advocate. In my full-time job, I am currently a process engineer. So I work on designing equipment that goes into new manufacturing facilities. I mostly work on water systems. So if anyone is interested in geeking out about water, I'd be more than happy to do that. But for my goal, I have been the program manager since 2021 officially, but I have grown up supporting this organization versus a volunteer. And then over the years, eventually into my current role. So I support a lot of our operations around the grant program, and then some of our programming as well, and managing some of our interns. And then finally, I participated in the New Jersey Boggs Center Partners in Policy Making course. So I know that's been mentioned a couple of times previously, but it's an opportunity for caregivers, siblings, professionals who are interested in learning more about advocacy to get the opportunity to take a formal education course. So I had the chance to do that, and part of where some of my learning has come from. So jumping into the content, the objective of this presentation is really just to help parents, regardless of where you are on the journey with your children, to understand what resources and information is available. And especially this ARC has aggregated a lot of the content that's kind of spread out across different resources into one place. And then understanding, how do I utilize those services across their lifespan? What you focus on in early childhood might be different than when during transition, and helping to highlight some of those key differences. And then finally, how do I find this ARC? Where do I go? How do I read it? And how do you not feel overwhelmed by the document? Because I know for many parents who have maybe read toolkits similar to my goal, you open it up, it's like 200 pages long, and you're like, you read it for 5 minutes and you close it up and never look at it again. So we want to make sure that it's user friendly and you have an understanding of how best to use the document. So what is it? So the Autism Resource Toolkit was actually revamped last year by our Doctor of Occupational Therapy student, Dr. Noelle Siegman. She spent a lot of time working on this document and bringing it up to date with the current trends, treatments, and information that we have. So the document is really looking to answer some of the big picture questions about who, how, and where do I get support for my family member across the lifespan, right? Oftentimes, toolkits only focus on early childhood or just on transition, but this document goes across the lifespan. So regardless of how old your child is, you can always come back and reference this document. And the document is split up into three main categories or sections. The first is the autism overview. This is really to help orient families on what is autism. What are the different treatments? What are the potential comorbidities? What are some of the statistics, myths, and facts? Just to kind of help parents and families who maybe aren't familiar, and even allies or other people that who maybe may not have family members, just to give them a chance to better understand exactly what it is. Section 2 is to understand, okay, we've got this diagnosis. I understand what it is. What next? And that's a question many families often ask. And then the third section is really focusing on, okay, now that we've kind of got a groove going, we're enrolled in some therapies, what are other resources that we can leverage and use, right? Because supporting your child doesn't just stop at ABA or what's offered in school. There are also other things that we can do to better support our family members. So those are the three main sections of the ARC. And I'm going to go a little bit more in depth of to what's captured in each chapter, but just to help orient you as we go through the different chapters that we cover. And so if you would like to, you're more than welcome to follow along with me as I talk through the chapters. So on the screen is a QR code. If you're on your computer, you can scan it, or you can also go to our website. That's the URL, mygoalinc.org/resources. And if you scroll down, it'll say the MyGoal ARC. So you can actually open it up and follow along as I'm talking through and reference it again, since we're here and we're talking about it, so that you can familiarize yourself with the document as we go through it. And so for the exciting part, what is in this arc you keep talking about? And so starting off, first chapter really answers the big question, what is autism, right? What is autism spectrum disorder? And I think this chapter is important regardless of, how long you've been on the journey, especially because how we defined autism 10 years ago, maybe when you first got your child's diagnosis, is different than what it might be today. And I know we had our Ask the Expert last year with Dr. Holliday from the Autism Science Foundation, and she shared a little bit about how diagnoses and definition of autism has changed. So regardless of whether your child is 2 or 21, this chapter is still really relevant. So we talk about what are some of the symptoms, how do we categorize the different ways in which autism can affect a child developmentally, right? Social, communication, sensory, and behavioral differences across the lifespan. Then we're also looking at levels of support, right? For some of our children, especially if you have more than one child on the spectrum, some children require more support, right? Especially in activities of daily living, communication, and other children may not, right? And I think it's important for us to understand, especially that autism is a spectrum disorder. So how autism presents in your child might be a little bit different. And this section is also helpful because it may be able to help you key into certain behaviors that you're noticing, but don't necessarily have the language to describe to a healthcare provider or to a teacher. Then you can see the terminology and say, okay, that's what I'm seeing in my child. And so therefore, when you're communicating and advocating for them, you're better able to describe what their challenges are. And then also the diagnosis process, right? Of, okay, first step is I'm noticing that there are some behaviors or developmental delays, right? And then, okay, where do we go from there? How do we then go into the diagnosis process? Who do I get a diagnosis from? So a lot of those questions are answered in that first chapter. There's also discussions around, some of the symptoms that you can notice over time, and then, why early diagnosis matters. The other aspect I want to highlight too is that this chapter also describes who are the different professionals, right? I'm sure for many of our older parents, you recognize that your child support team is like a board, right, of different directors. So you have your dietitians, you have your primary care physician, you have all your therapists. And so when you're first starting the journey, it's important to understand who are the different people I need to have within my board. And so that chapter goes into that depth. Um, the next chapter is really understanding what are some of the facts and myths that exist, right? So on the screen, we have a few that are highlighted within this chapter. So the first myth is that everyone with autism behaves the same way. And for any parent who has older children or multiple children, you know that that's not true, right? Autism is caused by bad parenting. That's definitely not true. You're no less of a parent. There's nothing that you did that to cause them to have autism. That people with autism can't feel emotions, they can't have friends, they can't have relationships. That's also very untrue. Even for children who may be nonverbal, they're still definitely able to find ways to communicate. I know for my younger brother, he is the loudest person I've ever met without using any words. Like, he is able to make sure you know exactly what he needs, right? And then the last is that autism is untreatable, and that's not true. There are opportunities and therapies and ways to give your child the tools that they need to progress. So this chapter really helps to provide parents with okay, what's true, what's not, so that you as a parent have a baseline before you're now starting to engage with practitioners. This third chapter is just around statistics, just to help you better understand and frame, prevalence, education, and some of the diagnoses, statistics that exist about autism. So it's just good for general knowledge. And I'm sure, as many of you are aware, the statistics are constantly changing. So this is just a way to help, again, re-baseline any of our families who have been on the journey for a while. So now we get into chapter 4, which is the start of section 2, which is the after the diagnosis. And this chapter focuses on what are some of the other conditions that we see with children that typically have autism. Oftentimes with practitioners, especially those who are not familiar with the autistic population, they just wrap everything into autism, right? Oh, you're seeing this, autism. You're seeing that, autism. And that's not necessarily true. And so this chapter is to really help you to better understand, outside of autism, what are some of the other conditions that could potentially be affecting my child that are treatable, or we can find other ways to respond to in order to make their learning experience better. So it's really just to help you to frame. And again, this chapter is important because as your child grows, some of these things may change over time. So I know for my brother, he developed seizures in his teenage years, right? So that necessarily didn't apply when he was younger, but it did become important in his older years. He's older. He's not that old. He's 24. But as he grew, it became important. So again, this is important to revisit so that you know and understand as your child grows and enters adolescence, what types of things can arise as they grow up. This next chapter is focused on some of the special education items that exist, right? So early intervention, what happens when you're in school, what are IEPs, what are some of the therapies that are available? Again, there are so many different options, so many ways to help support your child in gaining the skills that they need. This chapter helps to break that down so that you understand, oh, okay, these are the different types of behavioral therapies. These are the different types of speech therapies so that you know what are the options out there, because oftentimes it's easy for practitioners to focus on, okay, everyone with autism gets ABA, right? But that may not necessarily be the right kind of therapy to address your child's particular needs. So this chapter is important because it helps you to better understand what's out there so that you can advocate for what will actually be helpful. And then same thing for educational approaches. There's a subsection on IEPs. So for a lot of my school-aged families, that's a process I'm sure you're starting to navigate, and it is something that we're constantly having to advocate for our children. So this is an important chapter, especially for our school-aged individuals. This next chapter is on biomedical interventions. I know our future Ask the Expert will be getting a little bit more into this, so I won't get too in depth. But again, biomedical interventions are super important because, like I mentioned, autism is just one aspect of the whole person. And so what's happening with them physically or physiologically can also be exacerbating or making behaviors worse. So there are things that you can do to help their bodies feel more calm so that they are able to better learn and better just be better people. So I won't get too much into this, but know that this is coming. Same thing again, special education, knowing your rights, inclusive education, how do you collaborate with your teachers and the people that are supporting you within the school system. So this chapter, again, for our school-age friends is a very important chapter. Chapter 8 is a big one, navigating finances. This is something that many families don't necessarily have a lot of understanding of and don't know how to start because a lot of the conversation in the community is focused on school and not necessarily on the finances. So this chapter is really important, not just for people who are transitioning, because that's typically when we start to think about finances is when they're like 16 or 18 and they're about to become an adult, but you really should start as early and as soon as possible. There are different accounts like the ABLE account that you can start to take advantage of much earlier. And so that's really important for anyone right across the lifespan to really understand what are the finances around and how do we better support our children from a financial perspective. And then while we're talking about transition, for any of our friends who are 12, 13, this is the time to start thinking about transitioning into adulthood. And so again, starting early, 14 is when you should really start planning, not when they're about to graduate. That's not the right time to start. There are a ton of different supports and programs that you can leverage, including the Department of Vocational Rehabilitative Services. And so those are the types of programs you can pull in. Your school district may not necessarily advertise those things, but this chapter will really give you a full picture of what exactly do I need to do during the transition period. And different ages will have different stages of what you need to accomplish. So 14 is different than 18 is different than 21. So that's all covered in this chapter. So if you have a child approaching the age of 14, highly encourage you to take a look at this chapter and to think through where are we now and what things can we start to leverage and use now, and especially thinking about life after high school. The same way your 8th, 9th grader is thinking about college, same approach here as well. And then the last section is on resources. So we have a long list of all of the different external resources that you can leverage. So we have different books for anyone who likes reading or wants something that's a little more in depth. We have a lot of different books and stories that you can use. Local contacts, we have a list of attorneys, financial advisors, programs, schools, services. So depending on what your needs are, we have a list of references, of recommendations, people that we've interacted with or we've, used in the past. So a lot of those contacts are really helpful. Technology is becoming a very big conversation, right, in every industry and every aspect of life. So there's lists of different apps, communication devices, and things like that that you can leverage and integrate into your child's life to better help them navigate through, their existence as a person. So definitely encourage you that if you're someone that's like, how do I integrate technology into their life? This is definitely the chapter for you. And then the last, which I'm definitely going to highlight at the end, is support for siblings. I know for myself, right? It's as a sibling, it's really important to help them to understand what's happening as well, because they're seeing things, right? Kids are very perceptive, as I'm sure many of you are aware. And it can be frustrating as a sibling, right? Because you're seeing something that's happening, you don't understand what's going on, and no one's explaining it to you. So there's a lot of really good videos. We also have frequently asked questions that are resources just for siblings. So if you're not sure like where to start or how to explain it, like you're trying to figure it out for yourself, what am I going to tell my child? That chapter is just for you. So we'll get into that in a little bit as well. So like I mentioned, you're like, okay, Sena, you just spent like 10 minutes describing this 100-page document. I don't know where to start. What should I read? I don't know where to go. So this next section of the presentation will be highlighting which chapters should you focus on first, depending on your stage in life. So if you're new to autism, again, the first few sections of the arc are for you. So chapter 1, like I mentioned, is all about autism, right? You want to make sure you understand exactly what it is, what's autism, like how do I go about getting a diagnosis? What do I need to keep an eye out for? What are the different subcategories of how we define, the developmental delays? So that's where you really need to start, is just level set yourself and give yourself the information you need to identify the signs. And then chapter 2 is also important because there's a lot of things that people like to say, right, that may not necessarily be true. So you need to understand what is true and what is not true, so that for yourself you understand, because it can be emotionally overwhelming to get this diagnosis and be like, I don't know, like, does this make me a bad parent? Of course that answer is no, but that's important chapter for you. Chapter 5 is also important for types of therapies. There's going to be a lot of recommendations, and the advice, especially for our early intervention and our younger children, is to start working with them as soon as possible. So it is good to understand what are the different types of therapies out there, and then where do we start specifically. And then number 6 is the biomedical interventions. I'm sure you're noticing that, or will start to notice in your child, there's a lot of different things that are happening, like I mentioned, physically and also mentally. So you want to start to address some of those physical challenges that they might be having earlier on. So those are some of the chapters to keep in your purview for any of our new parents or anyone who is has younger children as well. For our school-aged parents, a couple of chapters to keep in mind. Chapter 7, like I mentioned, with special education. I'm sure you're getting thrown into this world where there's a lot of meetings, a lot of things that are happening. And so the special education chapter goes over the IEPs. What are the different types of evaluations? What are the different types of accommodations that are available? And so that you can better orient yourself and understand, what are my rights as an advocate, as a parent, what is my child entitled to? And so that's important to know. Chapter 4, like I mentioned, with comorbidities, as I described earlier, some of your child's needs and some of the things you'll notice will change as they grow. And so again, it's good to continue to revisit this chapter so that you can pick up on those changes as they grow. Again, chapter 5, the different types of therapies as they grow and their needs change. The types of therapies that you pursue will also might change as well. And then, as I mentioned, chapter 8 with the navigating finance is core, because this is the time to start building their financial health, right? The same way that you might have is it a 529 plan for your other neurotypical children, some of you have to do the same kind of planning for your child with autism. They're no different. So chapter 8 is an important time so that you can start to put that into your financial plan for your household. And then these are some screenshots from the book. So I won't read it to you particularly. I'm sure you can read it on your own time. But this is an example of some of the content that's in there for our school age families. So what is the IEP process, right? First, you have to get an evaluation. Sometimes the school will also do a comprehensive evaluation, understanding, okay, are they eligible for, an IEP and for other special education supports. You go through, you develop the IEP, approval and implementation, and then ongoing monitoring. So this is just an example of what's some of the graphics and information that's in there. So I thought I would point that out for, because this is often a very big topic of discussion for our families. And then for any of our children who are 14 and older, like I mentioned earlier, transition can be overwhelming at times, especially when you're first getting into it. So chapter 9, the transition into adulthood, understanding what does that look like. Again, chapter 7 was special education, because you're still kind of in that balance between preparing for adulthood, but you're still in the school system. And so you do have to marry those two considerations together, those two stages, I should say, together. And so those two chapters will actually go hand in hand of pulling some of our transition or adulthood goals into our educational plans now while they're still in school. Chapter 12 with technology is a really great opportunity because transition is really about how do we prioritize independence and helping them to prepare for adulthood. And oftentimes technology can help with that. So I'm sure many of the children with who are nonverbal have communication devices and things like that. So again, this chapter will help you to brainstorm how do we give them the most independent life possible, and what are the sorts of tools that we can use to make that a reality. And then again, navigating finances is a big, big thing during your transition period as you prepare to set them up for adulthood. And so within the finance or within the transition chapter, sorry, we actually have a timeline. So depending on the age of your child, there's a bulleted list of all of the things to keep in mind for your child at each stage within the transition period. So we have bullet points for any children who are 14, 16, we have 18 and also 21 and over. And so again, as you're going through the process, there's a lot, if you've sat in on any of the SSI and Medicaid webinars, there's like 10 billion things being thrown at you. And so this will help you to break down, okay, what do I need to focus on right now? Like not every part of the transition phase you do at that exact moment. So this will help you to understand, what do I need to be aware of now and what do I need to do now? So that's part of the transition chapter as well. And then again, for our adults, now that you have made it through the transition period, congratulations. I'm sure there was a lot to get going on, but you've made it onto the other side. But the work, the advocacy doesn't stop, as I'm sure you're very much aware. And so transition into adulthood sometimes can be helpful to help remind us of what we're continuing to seek, improving their skills, helping them to become independent. And so some of the strategies that are used during transition can be carried over into adulthood, right? Developing skills for activities of daily living doesn't stop because you turn 21. You still have to brush your teeth, surprisingly, and maybe you should kind of take a shower. And so some of those things are important to continue to work on and keep in mind. So that's why the transition chapter is still very applicable. Again, technology, like just because they're above 21 doesn't mean that they stop learning or that that's where they're at. They will never change. There's no, hope. But as they continue to grow again, and as they get older, their needs change, their desires change. And so technology can help to guide that process and continue to make them more independent. Resources, which is chapter 11, is helpful because it helps us to understand, like, what are the types of resources that exist within the state of New Jersey. Adult services is very specific to the state in which you live. And so for our adult New Jersey families, there are resources in that chapter to look at. And then same thing with finances. I'm sure I have explained it many times, so I'll spare you of one more explanation. But again, it continues to matter. It's super important to make sure that they are also financially healthy as they are going through adulthood, the same way, as I am an adult and I have a parent who is helping me to learn how to better manage my finances. The same thing applies for our friends with autism. So just continuing to encourage our parents to remain diligent in that area. For our siblings, I did, like I mentioned earlier, want to highlight the importance of making sure that you are continuing to help your children better understand. So the first is helping them to establish a growth mindset, understanding that their sibling is going to change as they evolve, as they get older, as they move through life. So helping them to see that they can continue to support their sibling as they get older, right? It's not like they can't be helpful, when their sibling is young. So as they continue to grow, there's opportunities for support. The second is frequently asked questions. I remember when I was a kid, one day my brother was able to eat Cheez-Its, and then the next day he was not, and I couldn't understand why. And so our frequently asked questions is a list of questions that our siblings often ask. And Dr. Noel actually did a sibling support group last year with some of our families. And so some of their questions that were asked during that support group actually fed into this frequently asked questions list, so that that these questions are very relevant and are things that our siblings are thinking about. So definitely helpful. And those are two of the examples. And the third is, how do you communicate with your sibling, right? It's important to understand that not all siblings relate the same. So I'm sure, even drawing from your own experiences, there are some siblings that you might get along with. You have a brother or sister that you'll talk to every day. Other siblings, you see them at Christmas or a Happy New Year. And so that sometimes those kind of relationships can be difficult for some siblings to navigate. I know I had a very easy time adjusting to the changes in my brother, but there are other siblings that I know that have really struggled even into adulthood. And so helping to foster communication and building their relationship is really a really important thing, especially to establish when they're young. So wanting to continue to encourage that in our siblings. And then the last thing I'll cover is our My Goal resources chapter. Of course, it would be a disservice for My Goal to put together a resource kit and then not list our own resources. And so obviously, by being here for our Ask the Expert series, you're already leveraging some of the things that we do. So we have our monthly education sessions, right? So you have the opportunity to connect with our parents. For those who may not be aware, we also have a grant program for any families with a child with an autism diagnosis under the age of 18. There is a grant that we have that provides $1,000 to families in need. And then honestly, just getting the chance to connect with families is so important. This journey can be really isolating if you aren't intentional about connecting with other people who are walking the journey. And so it's important to take those opportunities. So we have a number of different events. We have our social hour live. We have our empowerment moment with Dr. G. The picture that's actually on the screen is from our summer swim program and our picnic that we have in August. And so if you haven't been able to connect with us, or just didn't know how, or just felt like you didn't need it, I really encourage you to take the opportunity this year as your New Year's resolution to be intentional about connecting to our My Goal programs and events. You will be shocked how helpful it is to just have someone that says, I understand, I relate, and I'm going through it too. And so encouraging you to take advantage of our resources and programming that we have. And then finally, just wanting to share our calendar of events while we're on the subject. And so the boxes that are in pink are all of our January events. So you're at the first one of the year. We have our swim club that is coming up next Saturday. We have our empowerment moment on the 22nd, and then our social hour live at the end of the month. And so again, an encouragement just to take a quick look at this, see, and then from there you can definitely participate and join in the the events and the resources that we as an organization have. Um, the last thing I did want to show while we are here is the ARC is a fantastic resource. It's a document that compiles all of our resources into one place, but our website also has additional resources that you can review. So I'm on our resource page. So if you go to the My Goal website, and then you click on our resources below, it'll bring you here, and you can see, depending on your age group, there's a number of different websites, partner organizations, places that you can go for additional resources. Obviously, we are not the only organization who provides services and information, webinars. So a lot of the resources are also available here. And then you can find the ARC on our website here if you have not already done so. We also have our sibling toolkit. So encourage you to take the opportunity to review the types of resources that we have available. So that's at least all I have. I know I've done a lot of talking so far. So Dr. G, if you have any questions, or anyone from the audience, I'd be happy to review and take you through the document if needed.
Wow, that's awesome, Sena. Very eloquently spoken. Not because I'm related to you by any means. Great, really great in-depth description of it as you were presenting is giving me thoughts on some of the future topics that we can do. And definitely you
Yes.
highlighted finances a lot. So I'm sitting here like, okay, I think that's a great place to do.
Yeah.
Last year we did the one on topic on able, which was
Yes.
really good. So I guess I will ask the audience or people who are inside the Zoom room, what is one takeaway some folks have, and then I'll also highlight one or two things that you said. Um, Anybody wants to have a comment or question? I know there was a note in here. I'll read it aloud. Someone says, I'm able to attend this session. The information shared was incredibly informative. Thank you for putting such a valuable resource together. Yeah, no, so I'm glad that you mentioned that, Deidre, the reality is that a lot of us take it for granted until you hit a point where you're like, oh my God, I don't even know where to start. And as Senna said, I was at a place where I think Nick was probably 16. And just when I thought I know everything, it hit me that like, wow, he's getting to 18 very soon. I've heard information here or there. How do I start? She highlighted the finance bit. Parents, we are always encouraged to do your 529 plan. So 529 is an education plan. It enables you to be able to start saving money for college, which is a great idea. And I think regardless on where the individuals falls, whether they're diagnosed or not, you can start that. And the nice thing for that is that if for whatever reason they don't end up going to college, you can always convert that into what they call the ABLE account, which is the Achieving a Better Life. Um, Resource. And that's also a financial tool. You can convert your 529 into the ABLE account. You can also transfer the 529 to another child. So that's the reason why that's important. The other piece also here is that as the individual gets older, they may be eligible. I mean, this is just, I'm not a finance person by any means, and I will put my disclaimer out there. And the same thing I will say to everyone here is that while the Autism Resource Kit is put out there, it does not endorse any particular provider. We're here to just provide information. So we always say that, go in it, doing your own research, but this is compiled to help you. So there's no any endorsement in any particular provider per se. It's not an endorsement. We're not providing a medical advice by any means. We're not providing any legal advice by any means. So I just want to just put that out there just so that people understand that this is really more or less to help you navigate the process. Um, and so this is super helpful from that perspective that it was put together, looking at resources in the past year or two. So this was a great opportunity for us to update it. I think the PDF version is what you're showing, right? So
Yes, this is.
people can actually download the whole entire kit and look at it from your phone if you want to go that route. And like we said, it was just done last year. So it's a great tool from that perspective, and it has the information in there. The other thing that I also want to highlight is that this is my personal belief, and you can disagree with me if you want. I just think that this is both a what I call body, soul, and spirit diagnosis. What that means is that we have a soul within us, which is a compilation of your emotions, your intellect, your mind. People may have a diagnosis, but it does not in any way, shape, or form say that this is all they become, all they will ever be. Very, very, very important. So while there may be a diagnosis so you know how to begin to get help, it doesn't mean that this is what you rest on. So, and I say that because sometimes families refuse a diagnosis because they think you're pretty much putting a death sentence on their child. But the reality is that whether your child is neurotypical or not, you need resources. If your child needs to go to college, guess what? And they're in high school, you're probably going to be doing the ACT or SAT prep right now so that they can have access to college resources. You may sometimes have to give them tutors, right? To say, okay, my child is struggling in math. I need to get them a math tutor. That is the same approach that I want you to take when you think about these tools that are there. It is a tool is the tool. It's a resource so that that child can achieve. And sometimes you may go into the information and realize that, you know what, my child is actually doing better than this because I don't need it. That's fine. But either way, we want you to address it. We want you to stand up and say, in this season, I need to look at it. So that is the reason why the chapter was, the book, the resource was beautifully done to illustrate. And Sana, you did an amazing job of highlighting this is the transition period. So the transition period means you need to think about what your child is going to do in the future. And it starts, I think transitions to start at 10. Whether they're neurotypical or not, they need to start at 10. You need to engage, expose them to a lot of information, resources, expose them to different sectors, bring them places so you know what they will like and don't like. 11, 12, 13, 14. So we don't leave it all up to teachers to figure it out for us. As parents, that's a mistake we make, and we're not having these conversations. We need to. And if your child is profoundly needs support, you may need to get adult services early, learn about it. So you don't want to wait till 18 to learn about it because it takes time. The 18 to 21 period is a very stressful time. Do you have a neurotypical 18-year-old? They're trying to figure out life for themselves. So how much more somebody who needs supports and services? So I think the point that I wanted to underscore here is the need to read to start. You may say, okay, he's 14 or she's 14 right now. I don't need to worry about it. But do you know that if you ever want to be eligible for adult services, you're going to need Medicaid approval, and the Medicaid approval is going to come through SSI. And SSI eligibility is also based on what you have in your bank account for that individual. So there's so much there on the finances part. That's why I'm like, I think I definitely need us to do the finance topic again soon because people don't really realize that it's better to have an able account than it is to have a bank account that is regular because then the child, when they're about 16, so they do a 3-year look back, I believe, when you're applying for SSI and they want to see how much money that individual had in their account. And it cannot be more than $2,000 in this time. So those things that are like small, but they're big. And if you don't know about it, you're not going to know. So I highlighted that section because I don't think we've done a lot of work in that area. Would you agree, Senna?
Yeah, I would definitely think so. I mean, I think especially, I think we've done it kind of in pieces, right? Talking about transition, SSI, Medicaid, and then talking about the able separately. But I think understanding the big picture of how they all tie together is a good place to at least to dive deeper.
Yeah, so it goes to tell you that this is all crucial conversation. So I think Ranka, you said one area that you took away is the transition part, uh, right? Anybody else has any comments or anything else that you think you want to learn more about that you think we can focus on? Any questions? Okay. All right, so we always try to get creative. We go to these programs, go to activities. I would definitely highly recommend that you belong to different parent groups. We're one of them, not the only. So that is so you learn from it and share the information. And I have to be honest, a lot of the things that I've learned on my journey with Nicholas has actually helped me with my other children. So people think that, oh gosh, kids are they're speaking very well. Guess what? I used to drag them all the way into all the my Go support groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yes,
So,
I can confirm.
so there are things that we've learned along the journey helping Nick that's helped there. Just Senna made a comment about Cheez-It, and not eating it. I'm sure now you don't even want to eat Cheez-It, Senna. Um,
I plead the fifth.
so yeah, and that's the dietary component that I was going to talk about. And part of it, and I'm now more than convinced to talk about it, because a lot of times our children have what we call restrictive diets, meaning that they just self-restrict themselves to certain foods because of texture, because of a lot of different things. And ultimately what end up happening is they end up eating junk, a lot of junk food. And junk food is anything that really causes more harm than good, even though it's supposed to be food. And those are some of the things that, as a parent, you feel completely guilty that the child is not eating anything. So you're just happy that they will eat the Cheez-Its. Not that it's nothing wrong as a snack, but if that's all they're eating, right? You're missing a lot of food group options within that. And so we just learned that for him, it was actually destroying his gut. And that was the reason why we took that away. So, but we replaced it now. This man loves his protein. He loves all kind of stuff, right? But the transition to find the right food was really difficult. So, it's really understanding that there's more to the story than meets the eye. You also talk about comorbidities, and I wanted to kind of highlight that by in any means, we're not promoting people getting additional sickness because you're already having enough to go through. But what we find is that what science showed us is that a segment of these individuals also end up having issues that are present that we don't pay attention to. But to Sena's point, we end up saying, oh, it's their autism. No, if a child has a headache, it's not their autism. They're a human being. They have a body. So that's why I said it to say it's body, soul, and spirit kind of issue. The reality is that there's something going on in their body. They're not feeling good 100%, and they sometimes struggle to tell us how they're not feeling. They don't think that they may not know. So unless you draw attention to the fact that, hey, this individual is having sleep issues. Why are they having sleep issues? Because they're having some gut issues. Why are they having gut issues? Because of the food they're eating. Because they're self-restrictive. So when we know that, it makes us pay a closer attention to say, wow, what's going on with this individual? Why are they there? And this we start to see some common, threads. And we try to find ways to address that. So that's really what that means by comorbidities, because we start to see that a lot of some individuals may have sleep issues. So some of the topics that we bring along here to do with the as an expert is based on the fact that we know that we start to see common threads or commonalities that we know we need to find answers to. So questions that need answers is really what it is. So the frequently asked questions page is also helpful for us to know. So when we throw it out there to say, hey, what things would you want to know more about? That's very helpful for us to be able to find speakers or trainers or experts who may help us to understand it better. And that's the reason we ask. So sometimes people are very quiet, so then I have to figure out what we're going to talk about. But hopefully this presentation has been helpful to you. We appreciate you, Senna, for always taking the bat and going at it, and doing such a fantastic job. Not because if it's not, I wouldn't say that. Yes, again, for the uh,
You're morally required to tell me I did a good job.
I am morally required to tell you that if there's an area of improvement, you need to do it too.
Yes,
So,
that's true.
so this is all part of that, right? Um, Yeah, so obviously that another topic that definitely as we're talking that I think needs attention is the siblings component of it, just because and maybe we'll bring it into empowerment moment there too. What are some of the questions or areas of concern that people have? Because you raise it up there, it's in the book, it's in the resource kit. So maybe we'll use that as a bit to bring that awareness to it. And if there are experts out there listening to us who say, hey, this is an area of training I want to be able to do some conversation around. I would love for you to be a part of that conversation with us. So yeah, so this is all she wrote. Any questions? Last minute questions we'll take? Okay. If not, once again, Sena, thank you. Fantastic
Yes,
job.
thank you everyone for
The
having me.
resource kit is there, it's free, no cost to anybody. We will continue to try to find ways to improve upon it. And once again, thank you, Dr. Noel Sickman, for helping to revamp it. This was a toolkit that we had for before. We just wanted to use it, update it. And for families out there who are listening in or tuned up in that other states, obviously this is New Jersey based, but there's some element of it that's universal. Share it around, give it to somebody else, right? They're struggling. There's some people who are crying at night and they're like, I don't know where to start. This is a tool you can give them. Yeah, and that will help them. All right, on that note, Nife, you want to talk about upcoming events for us?
Yes. Let me share my screen. All right. Okay. So, like Sana mentioned earlier, we have our 2026 calendar of events. So all the stuff is in pink is the events that we have going on for this month. February is quickly approaching. I did want to note that we have Ask the Expert again in February, February 8th. It'll be at 2 p.m. Please note the time change. So yeah, we will be talking about nutrition on that day. So that'll be like a nice follow-up to this Ask the Expert. So make sure you come, register, and invite a couple friends that you think would be able to learn a lot from this session. Next, we have our winter swim meetup, which is going to be a lot of fun. We always do a summer swim meetup, but this year we decided we're going to meet up in the winter because it's so popular and so much fun for so many families. So, January 17th, which is next Saturday, we're going to meet up at the pool. It's an indoor pool, an indoor heated pool. I did want to know. We're not swimming outside. Um, so we will be swimming. So bring your bathing suits, bring your towels, just come, have fun, enjoy a time with the community. So you can register at the QR code right there. Then we have Empowerment Moment with Dr. G, which is always a great time. So get a word of encouragement to get through the season. This is really the perfect time. It's a new year. Sometimes by January 22nd, you're starting to renege on some of your New Year's resolutions. So make sure you come so that you can be encouraged, so that you can keep going. So that will be Thursday, January 22nd at 7 on Zoom. And then we have our social hour live, which will be in person. So you'll join us for breakfast. We'll talk caregiver to caregiver. It's always a really good time of just conversation and connection. You can be able to talk about anything you really want to talk about. It's just a time of connection, really. So that'll be at 9 a.m. on January 31st. So you can register at the link that is on the flyer. Lastly, this is an event that we are supporting. The Art and Life Foundation in Roselle, New Jersey is doing a art workshop for neurodivergent individuals. So there will be 6 sessions on painting, polymer clay jewelry, and kiln-fired pottery. So if your child is artistic or you just want your child to explore some new things, um, join the art club. They'll be supported, their unique perspective will be celebrated, and they'll just be able to have free reign to be as creative as they want to be. So they start meeting on January 25th. Um, you can scan the QR code below on the form so that you can register, and it'll be a great time. So if you have any questions, you can email us as well at info@mygoalinc.org, and we'll be happy to answer any further questions that you may have.
Wow, awesome. Thank you so much. It's a lot of great and exciting program stuff coming up for the year. As Nifa said, the winter swim is in collaboration with the Aquatic Center. What is nice about that place is that the pool is really designed to support individuals on the spectrum and other intellectual disabilities and physical disabilities as well. So that's the reason why we like that particular pool. So it's adaptive pool. Really cool. So, and then obviously they have lifeguards there. And this is something that you can register with us. So more info, register online for that program, as she mentioned. And if you have any other topics or things you're interested in, please let us know topics that you think, hey, I want to learn more. I'm struggling in this area. We'd like to correlate that, and as we plan our time, we do that. And as she mentioned, there are some, since we're New Jersey based, a lot of our activities are part of Central Jersey. So this way, the live ones anyway, you can meet up with us. We're doing the live meetup. So this way we can have conversation and talk. So we just want to definitely encourage you wherever you can meet us live, do come. This is how we do life together. And sometimes you just never know. Once again, join us for upcoming events this Saturday. And then, of course, the virtual ones are always open to everyone. So once again, thank you so much for being here, for learning with us, for growing with us. And the Autism Resource Kit is online, as Sena shared it. And we definitely want you to be able to help us spread the news around. So uh, our mission is met when we create resources, provide the resources, and then also be able to create connections. Um, at the next Ask the Expert, we'll have more information about our grant program, and also on the 22nd, we'll have information about the grant program, which will be going live soon in February next month, believe it or not. So stay tuned for that. We will be sharing additional fundraising opportunities because we do all this programming for free. Um, but it is done because grants and also donors and supporters who make it happen. So we want to always say thank you so much to all our supporters and who are there with us and for us. So once again, we appreciate you. And we want to say thank you to our speaker, Sena Kumapley. You'll be seeing more of her because she did such a good job. This is what happens when you do a good job. You get to do more of it. So
I'm very excited.
on that note, thank you, everyone. And have a great, great, great rest of your afternoon or evening if you're there. Have a good one. Bye bye.